I'm now happy to introduce Jake Batsell. He's an assistant professor at Southern Methodist University. Make yourself comfortable. Very warm welcome. He was a former Texas Tribune fellow. And should I say more about you?
I'm going to briefly introduce myself as well. So.
No, once mainly known as annual fundraising drivers of non-profit media memberships now, and we're really addressing that subject,
yes.
and now evolving into a viable revenue source for innovative non-profit and for-profit media. So it really, prolongs what we have been started to discuss. So
Absolutely.
The floor is yours.
So, good afternoon. Very pleased to be here. I have German heritage. It's my first time to Berlin, so thrilled to be here. I'm Jake Batsell. I teach journalism at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, home, of course, to J.R. Ewing and the Dallas Cowboys, the American football team, but also home to Southern Methodist University, SMU, private university. I'm honored to have the opportunity to represent the Meadows School of the Arts here, and SMU is also become a more interesting place in the last few years because it's home to the George W. Bush Presidential Library as well, which if you're a journalism professor gives you lots of interesting things to send your students to go cover. So very pleased to be here today. I began teaching journalism in 2008 after a career of more than a decade as a newspaper reporter, most recently at the Dallas Morning News, and prior to that at the Seattle Times, where I was fortunate enough to work with another one of our speakers here, Robert Hernandez, who you'll be hearing from later. But what I'm going to talk about today is some research that I've had the chance to do over the past few years, really focusing first on the question of audience engagement and practicing engaged journalism and what that means, and that led to further research into business models and the best practice of digital news. So there's two main works that I'm going to be referring to here today. Please feel free to tweet. All the slides are available. I posted them with the conference hashtag, and then there's also a short link there as well. But what I'm first going to describe is I had the opportunity to spend a year, had a one-year research leave to be embedded in the newsroom of the Texas Tribune in Austin, Texas. The Texas Tribune is a nonprofit, nonpartisan political news site that's funded through a variety of different revenue streams, as I'll describe in more detail. And this report is actually, I'm going to be distilling some of what I learned at the Texas Tribune about their membership models and their membership strategies. And this report is actually freely available. It was through a very generous fellowship from the Knight Foundation. They funded this fellowship, and so this is a free PDF available via the links, via that short link. And what led to this was I visited the Texas Tribune. A number of my former colleagues from the Dallas Morning News and friends from my former life as a journalist now work at the Texas Tribune, and I visited them first a couple of years earlier for this book called Engaged Journalism, Connecting with Digitally Empowered News Audiences, where I visited about 25 to 30 different newsrooms across the US, also a few in the UK, and interviewed over 100 different journalists about how the relationship with the audience was changing the way that they're doing their jobs. So those are some of the questions I've been wrestling with for the past few years. But first, to the Texas Tribune, there was a PDF version of this presentation that we uploaded that all the fonts looked correctly, so I don't know if it's possible to swap that out, but if not, the link here has links to the PDF slides. But the Texas Tribune is if you'll forgive the formatting glitches there, a nonprofit, nonpartisan political news site, like I said, started in 2009 by a venture capitalist investor by the name of John Thornton. He's one of the principals at Austin Ventures, which is the biggest VC firm in the US, not on one of the coasts. And he teamed up with Evan Smith, who was the editor-in-chief of Texas Monthly Magazine, a very skilled interviewer. He has his own PBS interview show. The two of them teamed up together to In 2009, to start from scratch a digital nonprofit political news site. And what they've done since then, it's 2016, they are bigger and better than ever. And one thing that I got to really see up close during my year at the Texas Tribune was the evolution of their business model. When they started off, it was a largely philanthropic business model. They had 37% of their funding came from individual wealthy donors in Texas, another 22% from foundations, 13% that first year, in the first full calendar year in 2010 from corporate sponsorships and advertising, just 8% from membership, and then 7% from events. Over the course of the next 3 years, the Texas Tribune really became relentlessly entrepreneurial. So while they are a nonprofit and they have tax-exempt status in the United States, they have really aggressively gone out, sought out ways to create more of their own revenues and lessen their dependence on philanthropic giving and grants. And so by the end of year 4, the first part of my year, I was there from 2013 to 2014, their business model had transformed from being almost 60% dependent on philanthropic giving to down to 34%. So really almost from 2/3 to 1/3. And then the remaining, they saw a huge jump in corporate sponsorships and advertising, in events, and then also in membership. And so they increased their membership between year 1 and year 4 from 8% of overall revenues to 13%, which is an increase of more than 60%. They've, I think, we're going to talk for the rest of this time today about membership best practices, but really I think the Texas Tribune is a prime example of revenue diversification, and constantly identifying multiple streams of revenue to sustain the journalism, the public interest journalism that couldn't really ever pay for itself anyway. It was always subsidized by other things in the mass media business model. So here is how the Texas Tribune makes its ask. It's really not, there's a long tradition in the United States for like National Public Radio, PBS, television, to have these pledge drives where you would have airtime and you'd promise them a tote bag or a T-shirt or a button or some sort of trinket in exchange for their support. That's not the Texas Tribune's philosophy. It's really a philosophical ask on their part. It's to support our work, and it's also it's a mission-based ask with tiered benefits. And so this is the latest membership page where you can. It's very user-friendly. You can move it up and down the line, but they have 7 or 8 different levels of different tiered membership, going from a student for $10 a year, which basically is enough to barely cover costs. But then it goes up to activist, diplomat, benefactor, and so you can go all the way up to the editor's circle, where you're contributing up to $5,000 a year. So really the recurring donations run between as low as $3 a month to as high as $5,000 a year. Before above that level you start getting into the philanthropic giving categories. So the tiered benefits, what distinguishes a diplomat from a benefactor or from an activist in their level of memberships? Well, it's different levels of access to content, to extra content, newsletters from the CEO, a monthly roundup of the best content, discounts to events, which are a huge part of the Texas Tribune's business strategy, recognition on the website at a certain level of giving. So basically, there's all these different levels of benefits, but it's not trinkets or physical things. It's really access more to information or to discounts or other types of benefits. And like I said, it's a mission-based ask. It's a mission-driven ask. Moving on from the Texas Tribune, I've, especially with the chance of having to visit different newsrooms for the book, we're obviously seeing more for-profit media enterprises pursuing membership models as well. And I really think that a lot of the same premises of what I learned during my year at the Texas Tribune, I'm seeing unfold in the for-profit media world as well. Politico Pro, I know Politico's speaking in the other room there, so he might be describing their strategy more about what Politico is going to be doing in Europe. But Politico Pro in Washington, D.C., in addition to having high-dollar subscriptions, institutional subscriptions to lobbying firms and legal firms, they offer subscribers trivia nights where you can come to a bar and have beer and barbecue and be part of a trivia contest. So I guess if Politico Europe does that, they'll start having contests and having Hefeweizen and Bratwurst, and answering trivia about German politics in the EU. Really, I think there's another GeekWire they're sort of the tech crunch of the Seattle area. They cover the startup scene in Seattle, a for-profit startup. Slate Plus, I know we have a speaker from Slate. I was here earlier hearing about podcasts. But I guess the distinction between subscriptions and memberships, the title of this talk is From Subscription to Membership, What Publishers Need to Know. At least among the places that I've had the opportunity to visit and get to know better, I have not had the chance to visit Slate, but I did some of these others, is that subscription is in large part paying for access to content, sort of a transactional arrangement, whereas membership is paying to join and support a community of purpose. And that can happen in a nonprofit setting, but it certainly can happen in a for-profit setting as well. And Matt DiRenzo, a journalist friend of mine in the States, in Connecticut, just wrote a piece for Editor and Publisher last week that some of you may have read already, called about the cultural shift from paywall to membership. And it came after I submitted my slides for this contest, or for this conference. But I thought one quote really resonated to me, and there's a link to his piece on my link that'll come back on the screen here in a second. But he said, instead of "we're putting up this paywall so that you stop freeloading," the idea of membership is we're partnering with you to keep doing the work that you care about. And so that manifests itself in different ways. GeekWire memberships, I've got a screen grab of here. They're very creative with the different tiered levels of membership that they offer. But so it runs from the gamut from discounts off of event tickets. GeekWire actually has a job posting section, so if you get a seed pass, you get 10% off of job listings. You're also eligible. They have a group health insurance coverage plan where if you're a member, you have access or eligibility to a shared health care plan with, I guess I would assume, more favorable conditions than Obama's universal health care that any American can sign up for. They also, this secret decoder keyring, if you're a GeekWire member, it's basically, as I understand it, just kind of a access to their members page that they call, they give you the secret decoder keyring. But as you can see, as the tiers go up from Seed Pass to Startup Pass to Gold Pass to Super Pass to Galactic Pass, you increasingly get different levels of access to their events. I had the chance to visit their GeekWire Ping Pong Bash, which all of the startups of Seattle are battling for the golden paddle, to have bragging rights as the best ping pong startup of the year. But these are also sponsored events, where and they're networking events. I went around at this ping pong bash and interviewed people and said, why are you here? Why are you willing to pay $60 to come play ping pong and be part of this event? Or and now those events are included as part of membership. And they said, well, because GeekWire brings this community together. I know when I come to one of these events that I'm going to see the people in my community that I want to see. They also even said that if they have a news tip, they're more likely to pass it along to GeekWire than they are to the legacy news media because they better understand their community and they bring them together. And so that's, again, you're kind of supporting a community of purpose as opposed to just paying for access to content. That photo right there is the founder of GeekWire, the angel investor who started it. And so he's out there, in a coat and a tie, on the street saying, sign up today. So it's pounding the pavement for memberships. So anyway, so if I have to kind of wrap things up with some key strategies, whether it was at the Texas Tribune or some of these for-profit news organizations that have been starting membership programs. Some key things to think about. One is to define the ask. Are you offering mainly benefits, or is it mainly a more philosophical ask, like support our mission and support the work that we do? So you have to kind of understand what the core ask is. Another thing is to be creative and inclusive. Inclusive, like I say, the Texas Tribune, you can sign up for a $3 monthly donation and become an enthusiast, they call it. And that might seem like peanuts, but that's another $36 a year that can pay for open records requests, or can reimburse reporters for gas when they drive to a fracking story that they're working on. So being inclusive, and then also being inclusive on the high end of things, because there's a certain segment of population that maybe they're not the big level philanthropic donors, but maybe they'd be willing to, maybe their company can write off, for as part of a membership, $1,999 a year for a galactic pass that's going to bring them benefits. Avid subscribers make great members. So another thing, when I was at the Tribune, they mentioned they really tried to move people down the line, or the conversion funnel that I'm sure many of you have your own version of, the conversion funnel of taking readers to subscribers to members to supporters. But certainly using your own data, your own email lists, your own registration patterns to be able to identify who might make a good member. Pushing automatic plans. The year that I was there at the Texas Tribune, they finally converted from being based mostly to the one-time gift option to recurring monthly gifts or even recurring annual gifts, but making it automatic, just like investing in 401k retirement programs in the United States. When you make things automatic, when people consciously opt in and they have to consciously opt out, certainly is a steadier revenue stream. So events can maximize value. I do think that it's maybe more of a challenge the broader your mission, the broader your coverage area is, because events, when you can combine a subject area with geography, where you can routinely have events in the same area to reinforce the benefits of membership. That's one way. You can offer discounts, you can offer free tickets, based on the different tiers of membership, which can help maximize value. And then, of course, those events hopefully are being funded largely through corporate sponsorships as well. So more ways to just not rely on the good graces of donors to help fund the work that you do. Just the whole idea of over-delivering for your supporters. So, if you buy a gold pass and, you really exceed their expectations, they'd be more likely to move up to a super pass for the next year. So just really not just loudly exhaling and saying, okay, we got someone to sign up at the lowest level, but really actively trying to exceed their expectations to get them to invest more next time. And the other thing, though, is to evaluate the returns. Membership programs take a lot of work. They take a lot of advanced planning, a lot of preparations. You settle on different campaign themes. You craft messages, cater to live modes of delivery. So email strategy, social media strategy, direct mail strategy, the site itself, membership events. And, if membership ends up not being the right match for your organization, evaluating the ROI after a year and saying, it's just not quite justifying it, that's okay. It's not a magic, a magic wand. But I think depending on what your organization's mission is, it can potentially be a way to go beyond subscriptions into a deeper support of your mission. So that is pretty much my presentation, but I am eager to answer any questions you might have, and please feel free to visit the link for more details. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jack.
Yeah.
As I would say we have 2 minutes for questions.
Okay.
A burning question from your part? Anything? If not, I go to the staff question. Talking about creating these creative partnerships in offering experiences outside of that little box.
Yes.
The companies that you are addressing here, how much people were busy with creating these partnerships with ping pong areas or whatever it was, or bars or whatever?
I think if you're going to really make it a central core of your strategy, you're probably going to need one full-time person or one person who's a go-to person where it's clearly understood that that's part of their job. But I'll say, working in tandem, with other, directors of development, the chief revenue officer, the director of membership and the director of events often will work together. But yes, I think if you're going to do this right, it can't be something that you saddle someone who already has 10 other responsibilities with and expect it to be successful.
Regarding these models that you shared with us, is there any change to happen in the near future? What do you think that they are going to do on top to keep the success? Because there's a lot of other players in the field trying to do the same things. So what might be the next step?
Well, I think if you're I think offering extra content. I mean, the New York Times, I'm a subscriber to the New York Times. I pay a fairly large amount of money to pay, but they're still sending me emails saying, become a Times insider. For an extra $10 a month, we'll give you exclusive access to Q&As about the exclusive interview that our correspondent got with with Angela Merkel or something, the story behind the story. So I think honestly, people are going to go after their most avid supporters and find every way that they can, as opposed, I think it's more fruitful for them to try to extract more revenue from their most avid supporters than it is to widen the audience with, cheap page views. So I think they're going to be going to those core readers and subscribers more and more and finding more ways. New York Times, has a wine club. It's got, organized trips, where correspondents.
So exclusivity in depth with
the
audience you have.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Jack, thank you very much for sharing all these insights.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.